Okay, so maybe first we think about our intention, since intention is always there, but something we're not very aware of. The mind is always moved towards an object, 24 hours a day, even when we're sleeping. So what moves us towards objects of experience is intention. So we always have some intention in every act, every mental experience, which means everything, all the time. So we can consciously direct the intention now. So this time we spend together, of course you can create an intention for your whole life, our whole life, but just for the couple hours we're together, or however long we're together here, then you can set an intention that the experience, for me, what I'll say is that this experience of sharing information with everybody, my intention is to help everyone's mind awaken to their full potential, which is a fully awakened clarity of mind. And then also I want that for myself as well, because I'm not totally selfless. But if I include everybody, it includes me, it includes you. So it doesn't matter what happens with that intention, then everything becomes, will generate a wholesome result. Okay? So when we talk about intention just for a second, and about wholesome results, things like that, that means we have some awareness of cause and effect, right? Because otherwise, if we don't think there's cause and effect, then there's no reason to have a wholesome intention or a positive intention, because what difference does it make? So it's even people who don't accept cause and effect or don't know about it. In one way, they kind of believe in it, some ways, right? Okay, and this is not a class about cause and effect, but it's always a factor. Okay, always a factor. In fact, so what we're talking about now is we're just going to finish or continue. I think finish. We go on forever. This topic of distractions is actually huge, really, really, really huge. I didn't think of it as so huge until I started thinking about it. And in fact, we could say that the whole idea of distraction is, in a way, is the whole Buddhist path. You know, everything is about distraction, really, or its opposite of generating a mind that's not distracted. So I have this, I'm not really going to do a comparison with modern psychology, because I just don't think the comparison is that important. But we did touch on it last time, and we started talking about the definition of distraction or hyperactivity. It's not really the same, because, like I said, in Buddhist psychology, distraction is at very subtle levels as well as gross levels. And in fact, people who don't have ADHD or ADD are also very distracted. So it's not, it's not really a good comparison. But maybe it's worth saying that when people think about distractions and say, well, he's very distracted, he's got ADD, what they're talking about, I think for the most part, is a very gross form of distraction. But fundamentally, we are all distracted at different levels in different ways. Okay. So we'll leave that. And if people have questions about that. I mean, this is when I showed this last time, and then I think I only have 2 slides from last time we met, but this is the second one, where every untrained mind is both attentionally deficit and hyperactive. Okay? Which I think is one way to bring everyone into this conversation. It's not just for those who know or think they're distracted. That's just a gross manifestation, as we said. And people who have that gross distraction need to kind of work a little harder, we could say, because there's something going on that's unique for them. But that's not who we're addressing. We're addressing everybody. And I think that, I don't know, it'd be an interesting experiment, but my belief is that people who are extremely distracted or hyperactive just have a more gross form of what we all have. And there's reasons for that. There's reasons for that, of course. Okay. So I threw this one through this not right way to say that is I threw this slide in. Lam Yeshe gave a lot of quotes that are very apropos for psychology, and this one: to become your own psychologist, you don't have to learn some big philosophy. All you have to do is examine your own mind every day. You already examine material things every day. Every morning you check out the food in your kitchen, but you never investigate your own mind. Checking your mind is much more important. So I didn't know where to put this quote in terms of this presentation because it's relevant in all different places, all different parts of this presentation. So I thought, well, I'll put it here, and because the reason I have it in here is when we get to talk about the remedies for distraction, it has a lot to do with, it's relevant here, and it's relevant in the middle, it's relevant at the end, because the idea of distractions, it's really for regular, us ordinary people, it doesn't seem to be really much of an issue, does it? You wouldn't say that that's a problem for me, other than the people who struggle with attention deficit disorder or one of its forms. But otherwise, this idea of, and I know it came up because there is a conversation going on now currently in the last several years as more and more technology invades our lifestyle, more and more just abundance. Really, it's not just technology, but technology has sort of amped it up. It really amped up. It's people 100 years ago were distracted too. But this is something very unique in today's world, isn't it? Something that's very different now. And I think part of the problem is that this has never, people are not have not had conversations about the implications of all this abundance and all this technology and all this availability. It just seemed good. It seemed to fit the paradigm or the model of at least American culture, consumerism, materialism, is that more is better. And us, of course, as philosophical people, we know more maybe is not better. We know that. But yet we're still seduced by that philosophy. And so it takes a whole new way of living in this current environment, because obviously we're not going to get rid of all this technology. We're not going to get rid of all the distractions. There is some management we can do, definitely. But it's funny how we're not really having that conversation. In schools, of course, they're talking about kids not bringing their cell phones and not bringing their it's this whole debate. Should we give iPads out? Should we not give iPads? And, the jury's out whether all that technology helps anyway. But the idea of distraction is not exactly what we're talking about, although everyone knows. You see kids at school and they're all, cell phone. And we go to dinner and everyone's on their iPhone, or their smartphone. And so it's a big conversation, and it's something that's not very public yet. It's becoming public. But it's not really it's sort of parents who can't get their kids' attentions, or partners who, spend time with their partner and they're on their phone the whole time or something like that. So now we're talking about, but those are pretty gross forms of distraction, but they're also sort of obsequious. It's really funny, isn't it? They think about even at work now, because we have computers. I forgot to write down, there's different studies about how much attention people are paying to their work when they're at work with computers as opposed to before when there are no computers. We see, really we can probably guess we're not any more productive than before. There's some things are like when you go through immigration and you're on the computer, but I don't know if we went through immigration any quicker without computers, did we? It seemed that would be an efficiency. Everyone's in the it wasn't fast. It wasn't slower or faster, right? It's about the same like now. That's kind of funny. The same about living in Nepal, and you go into these offices and try and find something in one of the government offices, and they have those big thick books, and there's just piles of them behind them. They're leafing through, and then they write everything write everything in triplicate, and write then carbon paper and stuff like that. I don't know, do they still make carbon paper? Okay, so this thing about examining or checking your mind is directly related to the practice of anti-distractions. So we have distracted mind, and there's an opposite. What's the opposite of a distracted mind is a more focused mind, you could say. But it's not just focus. There's mindfulness. Again, a word that I'm shy to use because it has so many different meanings, but it really is, in the pure sense of it, it is about mindfulness. It is about focus. It is about intention, okay, and attention. So those things come into play. So let's remember what Lama's saying here. Investigate your mind. The other thing about that, but you never investigate your mind. You know, what we're going to do here is all about that. Okay? So I just put this up. It's a lot of words, and I usually don't do that, but just to get the definition in Buddhist psychology, vikshepa, or vikshepa, in Tibetan Nampar Yangwa, is a Buddhist term that is translated as distraction, mental wandering. So those are synonyms, distraction and mental wandering. In the Mahayana tradition, vikshepa is defined as a mental motion. Remember that, mental motion. It's an unusual term, isn't it? Or wandering towards an object which causes the inability to remain one-pointedly on a virtuous object. Now, that's kind of interesting because the virtuous object, the inability to remain one-pointedly on a virtuous object. So they definitely use it here that the idea of focus and distraction is a wholesome versus unwholesome activity. Again, coming down to that. Now, of course, we can focus without a virtuous objective, right? We always use the example of a sniper. Highly focused, right? It's not a virtuous objective. So in this context, everything is talked about. There's no meaningless conversation around this, if you know what I mean. It's not just, it's has to do with, but if we just take it in a broad sense, it's very hard for us to stay focused on a virtuous objective. Why? That's distraction. The mind wanders. Okay? It's a little bit like I was thinking about times when we feel really good or have had a really happy, we feel really fulfilled. Just as a very simple exercise, why aren't we always that way? It's kind of fascinating. We have all these grand descriptions, I guess, but really what it comes down to is, one way of saying it is because we're distracted. We're distractible. Right? Okay, so this idea of mental wandering causes an inability to remain one-pointed on a virtuous objective. And this I'm going to talk about in a minute, getting a little bit technical, but this is Ask the Buddhist Therapist. So there's some idea of psychology in this. Vikshepa is identified as one of the 20 secondary unwholesome factors within the Mahayana Abhidharma teachings. So the Abhidharma teaching in this context, this covered, it covers many things, but one of the things that it discusses in depth is the psychology or the nature of mind and the afflictions and all the things that happen to us. Okay? So I think it's interesting to know what those are. I'm not sure when I get to it, but okay. So this is just to be clear on our terms. Distractions is what the word in Sanskrit or Tibetan is, which is a synonym for mental wandering. Okay? Helps kind of know that mental wandering. Okay? Defined as the mental motion or wandering towards an object, which causes the inability to remain one-pointedly on a virtuous objective. One of the 20 secondary afflictions. Okay. I thought this was like a colloquialism, but I actually found that this is another word for it. Scatterbrained. You know, that's a good word, isn't it? It's kind of very descriptive. It is the subsidiary awareness that, due to any of the... Okay, now we're going to get psychological, okay? It is subsidiary awareness that due to any of the poisonous emotions causes our mind to be distracted from its object of focus. If we are distracted due to longing desire, the object of our desire need not be something we are already familiar with, as in the case of flightiness of mind. Flightiness of mind, great word. So, I think it's helpful for people who haven't gotten clear on the basic Buddhist teachings, for example, the Four Noble Truths in particular. This, in one way, is a really good way to understand the truth of suffering. Okay? Because it's so often, there's the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. Let's see. I don't have it on this slide. But, so this implies a lack of control, right? So if we had control, we could stay on an object as long as we wanted, correct? How long can we stay on an object? What do you think? Well, let's be generous and say we can stay on an object for 1 minute. I mean, people say, well, wait, no, I watch TV for an hour. I'm focused on, right? But that's not, if you were watch someone watching TV and you had also a camera of their mind, you would see how much it's wandering around, you know, because there's all kinds of inattentive attention, you know, all kinds of inattentive perceptions that are going on. You're not, just because we're not aware of it doesn't mean it's not happening. Okay. Okay. So these slides, by the way, this presentation tonight was tricky for me. I kept rearranging them. So everything's sort of interrelated. It's not so linear. I always try to do linear. So we might jump around a little bit, or, you know, but there is a method to my madness. So we talked earlier, one of the earlier slides talked about the secondary emotions, secondary mental factors. So this is educational right now, because we've got to get educated. We don't even know what. First, people don't know in general that we're distracted. They don't know until you say, hey, let's meditate. And, you know, it's hard to keep meditating if you don't know that you're meditating to be free of the distracted mind. So in other words, it's not going to be easy. And then it's hard to keep meditating when you don't know that the first noble truth of suffering is in many ways a distracted mind. You know, not the distracted mind, it is a distracted mind, but what does it indicate? Distracted mind indicates lack of control. So we're human beings. We're born with all this potential, all these facilities, all these faculties, all this sort of great resources, and yet we have no control. Okay. So I like to think that the first noble truth of suffering is about lack of control. If we had control, we could accomplish, you know, we could stay focused on anything we wanted to. If we had control, let's put it this way, if we had control, we've all experienced happy states of mind, but they don't last, do they? In other words, we can't just say, oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, from now on I'm going to be, you know, happy like when my child was born. Or when I got married. Or when I fell in love, okay, or when I went on that retreat. What does it mean that we can't do that? That's my question. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? Anyone have an answer in the audience at large?
Well, we don't have control over the mind.
We don't have control over the mind. Why not? I mean, thank you for saying it, but I mean, you know, I was learning to become a therapist. They say you don't ask clients why. I thought that was the dumbest advice. They probably changed that by now, but we have to. That's our job, right? That's sort of what we're doing. Why? You know, as a spiritual practice, that is figuring out why. We don't have control over it. So, I mean, it's a great advantage to now know that, right? I mean, before, I'm assuming you didn't know that before you started looking at it. Then you start looking at it, and who wants to stay there? So that's the problem with meditation and mindfulness and stuff, because not the problem with it, but the problem of how we approach it. We have to approach it in the context of that happiness comes from a controlled mind, and then understanding how control comes. That's there's not agreement on that. You know, all the spiritual traditions have different ideas of how control comes, don't they? Some are faith-based. Some, like in the Hindu tradition, they have many different approaches, but you know, like bhakti or chanting, or so how do you get control over the mind? And that's the job. And it's different personalities are gravitate to different things. So when you think of a living being, and we've talked about this before, what's often the schematic that's used are what's called the five aggregates, and that's what's in the center there. So we talk about a living being, generally speaking. Well, it does. These five aggregates fit to every living being. Okay? So every living being has some kind of form or body. And then they have a mind. So body and mind. And for those more advanced Buddhist students or whatever who say, well, wait a minute, there's this whole category of the formless gods who are living beings. And now you're saying they have a form, but they do have a form too. It's a very subtle form. Okay. Spirits have a form. Okay. If you believe in spirits, but they do have a form, whether you believe it or not. And so when we're talking about this form, this body, and then mind. So sometimes talk about the mind, and one way to understand it is that we have consciousness, a primary mind, and then those primary minds function. They have functions. That's the one down below consciousness. There's 6 consciousnesses, one for each sense: eyes, conscious, ear, nose, smell. Those 5 senses: ear, nose, eyes, taste, and tactile. And then there's the mental consciousness, and that's the one that functions in have functions all the time. But one of the ways is to kind of identify it is you think about when you're sleeping, all your other senses are shut down for the most part, but you're still experiencing. So that experiencer is the mental consciousness. Okay, it does many things. Thinking, when you start daydreaming, things like that, fantasizing, or many things that the mental conscious functions, of course. So there's 6 consciousnesses, and they're just they reflect experience. Okay, so it's the one down below that, the compounded phenomena, which is sometimes called the skandha of everything else. Okay, mental factors. All the other mental factors just subsume under that. In fact, to the right there, feeling, discernment. Buddha outlined those because they're so important as one of the 5 skandhas. But in fact, they fit under the compounded phenomena of 51 mental factors. Okay? Do you know where I'm going with this? Anyone have an idea? I have a method to my madness, I told you. Okay. So, think like this. This is why it gets important. This is how it gets important. So you know that when you're either meditating or trying to get a task done and you say, I'm so distracted. So right now we have to get clear, that is a mental experience. Okay? Now, we want to blame external things. Someone keeps bursting into your office, or you hear the loud music playing outside, right? So that's how we're oriented. We are very oriented towards the external world. We don't see the interconnection between the external and internal, and we tend to blame the external for. But actually, the external stuff is not the cause of our distraction. And this is a hard one because it seems easier to have a quiet, undistracted external world so then I can focus. And actually it is, because we're new. But for the person who has really sharp focus, the external stuff doesn't really distract him or her, as you advance the mind. So distraction is a state of mind. That's why if it's a state of mind, then it must fit in here somewhere, right? This is the whole thing, form and mind. So where is distraction and all that? That's what we begin to analyze. That's what we begin to isolate. That's what we begin to focus on. Okay? So that's just a repeat of that. 6 consciousnesses and 51 mental factors. Okay? So that's experience. When we experience, so when I'm, experiencing the world, I'm doing it through my 5 senses, right? The external world. When I'm experiencing the internal world, I'm using my mental sense, mental consciousness. Okay? It gets more complex and more detailed, I should say, but that's not that important here, because there's ways that the mental sense can actually have interaction with the external world, but those are very refined states of mind. Okay, but just so you know, it can happen. And just so those 51 mental factors. We're not going to stay here long, so people are starting to get yawning and it's too much. But why not get educated too, right? It's if we stay uneducated, we will not get over this. We will not get a hold of this distracted mind. There are other ways to you don't have to get educated in this way, but you have to get educated. You have to have some sort of frame to begin to understand how the mind is functioning. You can't, like Lama said, you have to know how the mind is functioning. You have to understand the functioning of the mind. You have to be aware of the functioning. So mindfulness, when you're developing calm abiding, more and more you're aware of the mind all the time, not just in meditation. Driving over the hill from Santa Cruz, coming here with everyone here, when you're eating your food, when you're going to bed, when you're interacting. Okay, mindfulness awareness starts to become more and more dominant. And there's, as Lama Yeshe said, as you become more aware of the mind, not in that quote, but another quote, as you become more aware of the mind, control follows. We need to tell therapists that. We do. Because if they want their clients to get more and more control, which clients want, then they have to be educating clients on how to work with their own mind, how to see their own mind. Okay? So again, just to remind you why we're looking at this is because distraction is a mental activity. Okay? It doesn't mean there's not interaction with physical. Of course there is. But the blame is not on the physical. Okay? I often tell this story that when I was, before I was Buddhist, I was involved in Hinduism and yoga a long time ago. And I was part of Satchidananda's group in Los Angeles. Satchidananda, if you don't know, was, people saw Woodstock, the Woodstock Festival. Do you remember the Swami who opened the festival? You have to go back and watch it. Anyway, that was Satchidananda who opened. Beautiful man. I mean, really quite a saint. And so if distraction is blamed on the physical, the external, then it's hard to explain how one day we were at the center and he was visiting and he came to give a lecture, and he gave like a 2-hour lecture. Walked in gracefully, sat down, lectured for 2 hours, got up, left, went upstairs. And then my friend who was attending to him came down a little while later and said, "Did you know that when Satchidananda came down the stairs to go to the teaching, he stepped on a pin and it went into his foot, quite far. But it didn't show anything. He didn't show any discomfort or distraction. Gave the lecture, went upstairs and said, Kevin, hang on a minute. Can you see what's in can you get this out of my foot?" And it's like a big old pin, So that's control of the mind. That means control. So, in a way we could say he was happy, right? In that he was a happy person, or at least from what we could see, we would be suffering. So it doesn't mean you can't be happy with a pin in your foot. Or with a lot of traffic on the highway. Or with your kids who don't call you when they're supposed to call you it's 11:30 at night. You don't know where they are. Right? Or if you haven't eaten. I could concentrate, but I haven't had anything to eat yet. So my mind's all over the place. I mean, there's a relationship, don't get me wrong, but it's not cause and effect. Okay. So just quickly, these 51 mental factors, there's the 5 omnipresent ones, or always present, 5 discerning, 6 root afflictions. Those are the bad guys. 20 secondary afflictions. I don't know why I didn't put afflictions there. I guess I was lazy. 11 wholesome attitudes. So they're not all bad. And then there's 4 variable mental factors. Variable means they're good or bad, wholesome or unwholesome, virtuous or non-virtuous, depending upon our intention with them. One is like sleep. Sleep is a variable mental factor. It can be good or bad. It can be wholesome or unwholesome. Okay? I'll tell you why I'm thinking of talking about this in a second. So why can't I stop it? Okay. So the reason we can't stop it is because of habit. Mental habit. And in terms of Western science, I like the sort of metaphor of the neural pathways in neuroscience. In terms of neural pathways are formed by a continual train of thought. The neurons fire. The neural pathways are formed by neurons firing. Would neurons fire similarly based upon the mental train of thought, we could say? If you're always angry, then those neurons are firing in a way that creates these neural pathways that have a familiarity with anger. The more angry you get, the less control one has. So it's kind of a nice metaphor, a nice idea, because it also means the happier if you want to be happier, create happy neural pathways. And those happy neural pathways, and we can segue into Buddhist thought, have to do with creating positive imprints. So in Buddhist psychology, instead of saying neural pathways or neurons, we just talk about the mental imprints. But they kind of function the same. Now, there's a little bit different. Neural pathways are something atomic, molecular, physical. So they're not really mind. Even though they have a relationship with the mind. Okay? But they're not mind. And then mental imprints are mental. So they're formless. Okay? And the other problem is ignorance. So this is not typical to get an explanation that says mental imprints and ignorance. We can get a lot of, similarities to mental imprints like neural pathways or mental habits. But this idea of ignorance is unique to Buddhist thought, I think. It won't stay that way, hopefully. What modern psychology will begin to, adopt this explanation or some relationship to this explanation. Okay? So, this is really weird, okay? This next two slides are really weird. Any comments online? So the cause of distractions. So, start meditating and you'll see the distractions. Now this is kind of going from subtle to more gross, okay? So this is the real cause of distractions, is a misconception of reality, or a misconception of what's going on. What you're perceiving, we are misconceiving. Okay? Distractions are primarily a desire to experience what seems like enjoyment. So let's talk about what are some distractions, for example. What do you think is like... why are people on their cell phones so much?
It's a kind of bad habit that you want to keep your mind distracted or focusing on something different.
Yeah, it's like it needs to be stimulated almost, right? So would we say that stimulation seems like enjoyment? Because the way to test it is take away the stimulation. What happens to people? It's like they can't live without, like they get agitated. Okay? Distraction, so a desire to avoid what seems like unpleasant. So, in one way, when we talk about those kids at the ADD clinic at Stanford where I work with them, it seemed very clear that the mind needed to be stimulated. It didn't matter as much what stimulated it as much as it had to be stimulated. And if you think about it, what was it like for these kids with the absence of stimulation? It was, what's the word I'm looking for? Like untenable. It just felt so uncomfortable that they were driven to distraction. Because stimulation for those minds was unfortunately thought of as pleasant, happiness. It's a funny way to say it. So if you think about, it's like sometimes friends of mine are not Buddhists, and I say, well, I'm doing retreat for 3 weeks or something. And they say, wow, seems so boring. So what do you do in retreat? What are you doing? Read lots of books and do yoga and stuff? What do you... or like now we hear all these people use the word retreat, and they're like at up at this place in Scotts Valley, 1440. You got to go up there sometime. The food is unbelievable, and they have these big long breaks, and during the breaks you get a massage. They have beautiful spa, that spa, and then they have, I don't know if they have tennis courts, but that's the idea, and it's not to me, it's not retreat. And by the way, it's something positive maybe because people are being educated, but really it's not retreat. It's like, what does retreat really mean? Is you retreat from, they used to say retreat from the happiness of the senses. And it's a very religious way of saying it. But what it means is you retreat from your normal means of pursuing happiness and investigate what is the real cause of happiness. This is the thing, is that we have to be more comfortable with the whole concept of spirituality or psychology and mental health is investigation. It's all about investigation, becoming your own therapist. Okay, all this stuff that we're talking about is just kind of signposts, but you can't. It doesn't do anything. You know, it doesn't change the mind, does it? When we talk about this. So this is what happened. The cause of distractions. Can you guys, someone tell me another cause of distraction? What's another distraction? Someone throw one out. Music. TV. Think about TV. Like, it's hard, isn't it, when you think, I really shouldn't watch anything tonight because, I don't know, I should just read that book or something like that, or meditate. It's very hard. And then all of a sudden you're in front, well, just maybe a half hour. It's hard to analyze that stuff. It's hard. It's hard to see, it's hard to know what happiness is. But the problem is, more familiar we become, then, less attraction those things have, right? Okay. We all have that. Okay. So I should move on. We don't notice that all of these things are in the nature of dissatisfaction. So this is, if we meditate for a few minutes, they're impermanent and ever-changing. They don't even exist the way they are presented to us. Okay. Fundamentally, when we're meditating and we find our mind wandering off, it's because it's hard for us, we really get captured. Like, for example, maybe before I come here and I'm maybe trying to meditate, but I'm thinking about the talk, right? And I get caught up in my conversation about this and that and this and that. So I'm not really seeing my mind. I'm caught up in it. But if I were to just sort of observe it, even with that distraction, it's because I would be fooled and tricked. I wouldn't see that mental process, is actually in the nature of dissatisfaction. Okay? I'm doing it because I'm trying to figure out how to give a decent talk. Because that'll make, in a way, just to be kind of simplistic, that'll make me happy, right? And not giving a decent talk makes me unhappy. But that's all wrong thinking. And so I get focused on the talk, and it becomes something that seems permanent, right? Fixed. There's no fix there. It doesn't even exist the way it's presented to my mind. Because it's just a mere fantasy, right? It's just mental images. That's all it is. Mental image. We don't see that. Okay. So the cause of all distractions is the afflicted mind. Okay. The cause of all distractions is the afflicted mind. That's a pretty bold statement. The mind isn't only afflicted, right? It's primarily afflicted, but it has the potential. Its underlying nature. Its nature itself is not afflicted. It's more like these are the afflicted minds, or the afflicted poisonous attitudes. They're called the poisonous minds. So this doesn't include the whole mind, but this means that we're pretty much dominated by these. These are the root afflictions, right? As you know, and they have many different subsidiary. 20 different subsidiary. I just realized I'm not in. Oh, yeah. Wonder why that is. I'm not in presenter mode, is what I was just thinking. Oh well. So when we're distracted, we're chasing something either through ignorance, attachment, or aversion, anger. When you meditate, what do you get distracted? Are you aware of your distractions? So do they fit in one of these three categories? Does it have one more than the other? Or can you see how, like, for example, when you sit down and meditate in the morning, like, if you're really super busy, it's hard to meditate, isn't it? What is that then? Is that ignorance, attachment, or anger? Like, you keep thinking about, oh, I got to call this person. Oh, I got to email that person. Or what do I need to do about, they're coming into town, I need to book a hotel, but I forgot to book the hotel. Like that, right? That's called distraction, isn't it? Mm-hmm. What is that? You can see, so let's just be really slow about this. So, all that energy arises from one of these three afflicted minds. Can you see that or not?
I think it's attachment, because we're used to, our mind is not trained, and we're used to think about many things.
Yes.
And we can focus.
Why don't we just stop thinking for a few minutes? No, it's important. Why don't we?
Because our mind is untrained.
Untrained. Our mind is untrained.
We don't have we're not familiar with the meditation.
We're not familiar, right? As we become familiar, it's really fascinating, because then that whole, I got to book this hotel, and I got to get a rent-a-car, and did I call so-and-so to pick them up, or whatever it is. I'm thinking of Margaret, by the way, right now. She's really busy with a lot of schedules. But we're fundamentally, like you said, we're not familiar, so we don't see all that. We think it's all important. Right, Margaret?
I don't know about that.
She's more advanced. No, but I mean, we get caught by it, right? If you catch it, are you able then, when I say catch it, when you see, oh, it's just all distracted mind, does it subdue a little bit? Yeah. And when you, just before it's subdued, do you get a feeling that it's driven by one of these three? Which one?
It's attachment.
Attachment. This is what's interesting, because attachment, this is what I think was so great of a psychology. Because attachment tends to be, oh, I want that new car, or she's so beautiful, or I can't wait to see him, or we're going to have dinner tonight at, blah, 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 right? Or I can't wait for that cheesecake. We're not familiar really with attachment, are we? Because I gave you a choice of three, and you knew right away it was attachment. So what's the attachment? What are you seduced by? What are you tricked by? What are you attached to that you think is going to make you happy? I can put it in basic terms. What do you think it is? I'm talking to Margaret here for people listening about her scheduling and stuff, okay? And her busyness. She's busy right now.
I just think that it's to try to do as much benefit with what I do have.
To do as much benefit with what you do have.
Yeah, and just spread the love and that.
Uh-huh. So why the attachment, though? What's the attachment? So what are you going to lose? So attachment, sometimes one way to think about it is that if I lose it, then I'm going to suffer, right? So what are you? Excuse me for saying this. I'm not sure you're afraid, but what are you concerned about losing?
I feel like it's kind of an attachment to more movement forward rather than
Attachment to moving
fear,
forward.
Rather than, and, I'm sure there's some fear somewhere there, but it's more about moving towards doing something.
Okay, so it's a moving towards doing something, accomplishing.
To get the job done.
To get the job done. And what's it like if a job doesn't get done? What's the feeling?
I'm kind of like okay with it. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. And then there's kind of, I guess there's some disappointment.
Disappointment.
And, there's kind of like a sigh involved.
A sigh, like a resignation.
And then I was going to say resignation and saying, okay, fine. And if it's really important, then I'll push a little more to be like, hey, let's try to really get this done or get done this way. But as I'm getting older, I just kind of, it's like kind of acceptance of, okay, we just did our best, but at least moving forward,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Uh-huh. So when you're trying to meditate, all this stuff's coming into your mind. Does it come into your mind? Oh, I mean,
I don't really meditate about the scheduling.
no, like when you're trying to do a meditation practice,
Oh yes,
does all this invade your mind? Do you get distracted by all this stuff? Or are you able to control the mind?
No, I'm not able to control the mind yet. But when you say I get distracted by stuff, what stuff like
I'm
stuff
more-
that I have to do?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's what I meant. Like we're trying to do our practice. This is more just to get. It's like a microcosm of our life. So when we sit down to meditate, or just do some meditate, and we sit down and we're going to focus, but then our mind starts moving around, based a lot of times on pressure, right? That's why I was leading you into that. I was assuming, projecting, that might invade your meditation sometimes.
Yes, I think so. It's kind of pressure and kind of like a rush.
Pressure, rush.
Rushing to get something done. And,
Well, it's very much about accomplishing, isn't it?
it's kind of like trying to make the most out of my life and try to do.
So making the most out of your life. So your intention is good.
I think so.
But what about distractions? Is it good to be distracted then during your session? Is that helpful to get things done?
To be distracted during my session? Absolutely not.
No?
No. But I am for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
So getting things done. I like that one. Maybe that's it. What would it be like not to get things done?
you know,
Is that uncomfortable?
it's, you know what? I swear, being part of the center,
Uh-huh.
it's been a great teaching for me to being okay with things not only not getting done, but getting done in ways perhaps it's not preferable to me.
Wow.
Just being okay with it,
Right.
you know. So it's been very, very good teaching in that way.
So what's your biggest distraction when you're trying to meditate? What or maybe you don't have distraction.
No, I absolutely do. It's I think it's like what needs to get done.
What needs to get done. So it's a theme.
Yeah, it's like a to-do list.
Yeah. Okay, good. To-do list, a theme.
You know, I have to say, it hasn't always been like this. That's the thing. I'm telling you, it's been more, and it's more of a, it's just more.
So that's a theme. So that's what I was looking for. Okay, so a theme. What about for you? Do you have a theme that captures you? What is it? So remember that. Doing. Yeah.
A lot of thoughts coming out.
A lot of thoughts coming up.
Yeah, thinking about what I need to do.
Also thinking about what you need to do.
Yes,
Interesting.
I want to finish what I need to do, and it's a kind of losing control.
Losing control
Losing control of what I'm doing. It's doing things. Yeah, it's a lot of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I see a theme here, right? Doing things. Is this for you same when you get distracted? I'm talking about when we're trying to concentrate. Is it about doing, or is it doing? I think there's many themes, but there's probably several different. We each have our theme, and of course, I think to do things creeps in for all of us. But I'm more thinking like sort of more of a intense distraction.
I mean, sometimes it's just boring because
Boring,
you're supposed to focus on the same object continuously, and then, well, you have seen it at some point.
Okay, and you what?
You have seen it at some point.
So Urs is saying sometimes it's boring. You're supposed to concentrate on the same object, and it gets boring. Yeah. That's so fast. So boredom. I like. I wonder what that is. That ignorance, attachment, or anger? What do you guess? I mean, for you, what do you think?
Maybe attachment to some stimulus or some
Attachment to a stimulus. It's not exciting enough. Not entertained. I think that's a big one, isn't it? Not the to-do one is different. To be entertained seems to be also one. Boredom is the opposite of kind of stimulation, isn't it? Boredom also probably could be ignorance as well. It's possible. But most of the distractions, we're going to get to it right now. Thank you for sharing your... I'm going to ask more of you too, by the way. Does anyone have any... Oh, we don't have any comments online. What distracts you online?
Someone said getting things accomplished. Oh, maybe
Yeah.
that's her thing, is getting things accomplished.
So getting things accomplished, that seems to be a theme. So also for people listening and people here, we need to reflect on I think when we sit to meditate or to concentrate, mindfulness, I don't think most of us are not so aware that there tends to be a theme. It has to do with our personality. And of course the theme can change too. And the theme about to do, accomplished, is fascinating because I think when we go back when we go back to here, mental imprints, neural pathways, you think about this culture we live in. Now, not all of them. I mean, there's many cultures here in the United States, so it's kind of hard to say. But maybe think of your own culture here. How big is accomplishment? How do you feel when you're not crossing things off your to-do list, but more maybe for the to-do list? How does it feel to not have a to-do list? Yeah.
More relaxed.
Really? You're more relaxed.
Yeah, I usually have my list that I have what I have to do, but like my husband said, why you always have too much on your plate?
Right. Always too much on your plate. That's a theme here in this. Is that a cultural thing or is that a modern cultural thing maybe?
I think, but also it's part of this group we have here too. It's both.
Really, this group here?
I think so. I think we're kind of like doers, accomplished, three
Well,
of
it's
us
a
are-
culture, Silicon Valley. I mean,
For sure.
Silicon Valley, yeah. Yeah. It's so fascinating. Not so much, it's not the same today in Nepal, but particularly when I lived there, 1975, 1988, just to give a contrast. It still is in some ways like that, but someone would come over. They'd say, "Oh, you left your sweater at our house last night." And they come by, there weren't any phones. Until later. They come by, they hang out, hour or two, you don't have to give tea, it's automatic. Let's have a cup of tea. And so the idea of to do was not the theme there. Now you might be, I'm not saying you weren't distracted, because all of a sudden you're distracted maybe from the social interaction, right? And or wanting to be socially active or interacting with people. So it's just changed that idea. The idea that I've had friends who still living in Asia, and Nepal, and India, and they come to visit, and it's a confession, okay, yeah. And it's like, come on, I can't just sit here all day and just chat and drink tea like that. It comes up in my mind. So I got to go do, I got to go. And they really check up, well, what is it you need to do? But you invent this because of this culture of ours. They're invented things to do. And then all of a sudden, it's like Margaret gets upset with me because I haven't texted her back. Right? It's been an hour. But I'm with my friends hanging out drinking tea. Or I'm uncomfortable sitting around drinking tea because I need to answer Margaret. So it is about doing this. This culture is about this conflict, and we get the problem is we lose control. I have a friend, drives me nuts. I text him, he doesn't text back. He might text back the next day. I call him, leave a message. That night he says, "Oh, I think I got your message." And it's like, "Can I? Let's have lunch in an hour." And that night he calls, "Hey, I got your message." But he's actually kind of right too. He told me, I'm not going to be a prisoner. I don't want to be a prisoner to my phone and all this. So it is I think we need to take control. I think we don't question. So all these distractions, they're like, what's the word? They're like givens. You know, you have a right to be angry kind of attitude, you know? Who has a right to be angry, right? You know, everyone knows you text back right away, right? And then all of a sudden you're in the mood. So that's a cultural value that's developing, unquestioned. I mean, some people question it, but generally unquestioned, right? You're in a movie and you didn't text back? Well, maybe that one's okay, right? There's going to be certain ones that are okay, and then, but it's amazing. So what we're doing is we are institutionalizing distraction. Okay, we're institutionalizing distraction, or we're giving permission for distraction, and this is how the world is anyway. But I think it's time to start questioning it. But people don't know what to do. What else? Well, if I'm not texting, what am I going to do instead? I mean, what? Read a book? It's a good question. And it's not either or. It's more like the effects. There's nothing wrong with texting. There's nothing wrong with watching TV. There's nothing wrong with all this stuff. Right? What's wrong is loss of control. So it controls us rather. So all distraction, I think, really has to do with giving up our control. We don't have much control anyway, but then we don't have the idea that loss of control is unhappiness. So it's not happier to text, but it seems like it is. It's not happiness to check your emails. It's not happiness to check Facebook. It's not happiness. But we don't know what happiness is. This is our fundamental problem here. It's your job. You have to start educating people what happiness is. Right? All of our job. People don't. Isn't it amazing? It is so amazing. So if you're happy playing golf, then you play more golf, right? And if happiness is defined as that, but you got to go to work, then you can't be happy when you're at work, but you can be happy on the golf course. And golf course is just a metaphor. We all have our golf, right? Might be TV, might be with our family. You know, by the way, they're not all equal. You know, shooting heroin is not equal to playing golf. Playing golf is not equal to being with family. You know, but mindset behind all this is exactly the same. Okay? You with me? It's a desire to experience what seems like enjoyment. That's what distraction really is, the cause. And a desire to avoid what seems like unpleasant. But, you know, again, I want to reiterate from the beginning when I said we don't even know we are distracted. So instead of saying distracted, loss of control. Remember that picture? I don't know if you remember from last time, of the cow with the ring in its nose with the rope. That's us. Lam Yeshe used to say that. We're like the cow, like just over here, and over here. You know, whatever looks good, whatever looks enjoying, we just go there. And whatever's not seemingly enjoyable, we look the other way. That's our life. The meaning of life. How was your life? Did you have a meaningful life? And when it came down to, I served I fought in World War II. Or meaningful life. People, it comes down sometimes to just sort of one event, one period. And that was the meaning of their life. That was meaningful. I helped a lot of people then. It's just very sad, actually. Just a few minutes of life, you know? Isn't it? So take it one step further. So people here, listening in this room, when I was talking to Margaret, I get it, that a meaningful life is important to you, rather than just one phase. Like, you know, I served at the homeless kitchen for 2 months. Some people, that's it, right? So I get that. You want to have a meaningful life. Now, If we take it a little further, though, are you unsettled, right? If you don't have a meaning, that if your meaning's not being fulfilled. I realize that you've been evolving. You say less now, right? But that's kind of how it goes, because if that's the meaning of life, then that's what makes us happy. So the opposite, not having that, makes us unhappy. So it's still a trap, isn't it? And then we can become even, anyway, we know. So those are kinds of things are distractions. Those are the kind of things that drive distraction. So when the phone rings in the morning and you're screening your calls and you listen, right? And if it's a call related to your meaning and purpose, like it's the person calling who wants to have that appointment with you about, building the stupa, still distraction. When you watch someone like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it's amazing. You'd think some things would distract him, and you know what I mean? His mind never gets distracted. He's focused, but I don't think his mind's ever distracted. In other words, he's not pulled. So are we pulled by that phone message that's going on? Then you run to pick it up. Hi, I'm here. Yeah. No control. So we can be controlled even by purposeful things, virtuous things. Still loss of control, but it's better loss. Okay. Do you need a break or anything? I don't think so, yeah. We don't notice that all of these things are in the nature of dissatisfaction. They are impermanent. Oh, we did this. Ever-changing, and don't even exist the way they're presented. Ignorance, anger, attachment. Okay. Things that distract us. The desire to have more of something that we think offers us pleasure. This is the number one. This is the meaning of life for most people. Extend pleasure, isn't it? And so we're tricked by that. More golf, more happiness. More sex, more happiness. More food, more happiness. I love that cheesecake, so let's have cheesecake every night. Right? It kind of goes like that. Why? People kind of know, on one hand, that that's not true. But they don't know what is true. There's no alternative. This is really sad. Okay? And we're just distracted by the thought of avoiding discomfort. We spend a lot of time, if you're looking for a new car, it could be the first one, it could be the second one. You look for a new car, part of the thing you're looking for is what kind of comfort it offers you. Now, comfort is defined maybe by different people different ways. Have anyone bought a new car recently? Were you distracted by that?
Oh, very.
Very, yeah.
Very.
And we don't even think about it. I mean, that's just natural. Of course you are, but now we think about it. Anyone get a new piece of furniture lately? Mattress? Pillows? How's everyone's pillows? You happy with your pillows? Distracted by the thought of avoiding discomfort, thinking, I can't face that pillow again. Maybe how late is, where do you get pillows around here?
Bed Bath & Beyond.
Huh? Bed Bath. How late is Bed Bath & Beyond? Oh, I wonder if it's open till 9. I wonder if Karuna's going to finish early tonight. That's a distraction, right? That's loss of control. Simple as that. Okay? Having been criticized or put down. So this is very good stuff to do when you're meditating. Because if someone says something unkind to you or puts you down, and you sit to meditate, right? Over and over and over and over and over. I know I shouldn't think about it. No, I should. Oh, that's ridiculous. Over and over. Oh, it's all just empty. Over and over and over. Right? Unless you've realized emptiness. I mean, it helps. I'm not being. Was it blasphemous? Is that the word? Yeah. No. But anyway, why doesn't it stop? Habit, imprints, ignorance. It will stop. By the way, the answer to all distraction is. Ultimately, is if we see the nature of that thought, because we don't see the nature of that thought, we We don't see that it's in the nature of dissatisfaction. So we're thinking about what that person said, they put us down, or they criticized us, But the whole thought process, we can, if we step back, it's very powerful. You step back, it's still going, you're spinning, right? But a little part of your mind looks at it. And it sees that is the nature of dissatisfaction, that thought, that spinning. Because usually when we're spinning, we're answering back. Well, you don't know all the thing I went through to get that place ready. And, you criticized that, it was dirty, or you told me I didn't do a good job. But you don't know, isn't that what happens? But you don't know how much time, and you don't know that my daughter was sick, and I didn't have enough time, right? We go arguing. And anyway, you do a worse job than me anyway. The mind just spins. But all that's not seen as dissatisfying. And the whole event is not seen as impermanent. It feels fixed, really concrete, doesn't it? It feels like you're in a straitjacket. So it's not that way. It is changing. You just go, okay, it's just in the nature of change. You can't even find the problem because it's changing each instant. But we don't see it that way. We see it as solid and concrete, right? I'm just trying to explain what happens when you think about, if you really step back and look at the mental process of distraction. So we're talking about, all these been put down, wanting to be complimented and praised. Okay, you did your work. You did a lot of work. No one said anything. No one said anything about the project, the presentation. It happened to me recently. What was it? I don't remember what it was. But don't we look for that when you're doing some sort of extra work? You're going out of your way to do something. Even you're picking up your kids at 11:30 at night, and they were supposed to get a ride from someone else, and we're expecting them to at least acknowledge us. Or you go out of your way to help somebody. Even going into the hospital, someone's really ill or something. I think most people have this sort of thing going on, like, I hope, you don't say it like this, but it's down deep. Want to be recognized for the good deed you did. And he went in there, and God, he didn't even thank me. He didn't seem very excited that I came. He's kind of like dying there. It's true though, isn't it? Isn't it? Hard not to look for some sort of reward. We love praise and compliments. We don't like criticism. We don't like blame. Okay, so that's that. Wanting to recognize, increase our status or self-image. How does that work? You guys okay with your status not increasing, self-image not being, no attaboys? Taken for granted. That's the other. Taken for granted is the opposite. Anyone okay with being taken for granted? It's kind of natural, isn't it? I remember, it's not exactly, it's kind of like taken for granted, yeah. This is ridiculous. I remember vividly, probably was like 1982 or something, and I'm riding, and we're in a rickshaw. And because I spoke Nepalese, so we get out of the rickshaw, and I don't remember exact numbers, but it was like this. He said, okay, 10 rupees. I said, what? And I'd argue with them because I knew it was really only 3 rupees. He said, 10 rupees. I said, 3 rupees. And then they start talking Nepali, and they kind of go, oh, like they got caught, and because they think otherwise you're a tourist, and they can just. So he says 10, and he goes, okay, Saab, okay, 5 rupees. I said, no, I know it's just 3 rupees. And then I got out and I thought, oh my God, I'm arguing over like 4 cents. Because I didn't want to be taken for granted that I was like a rich Westerner, because that's, terrible. Taken for granted. Like when you go to buy a sales, like maybe like this new car thing, you leave, and then you saw all of a sudden, they hit you up with all these things. Like they send you all these offers, and then they send. And you're like, "What are you doing?" What kind of salespeople are they? And I'm not going to give my phone number next time. I'm not going to give my email address, because all of a sudden you're seen as like an object, right? That's the same thing. That's like status. That's like being taken for granted. You don't like being seen in that negative way. You want them to respect. You want to be respected. I'm the buyer. I'm the customer. Happens all the time, this stuff. Those are distractions. Not just, of course, when you're sitting trying to concentrate and you're thinking about this new card thing, that, of course, is a distraction. That's, again, goes back to attachment and pleasure. Fear of failing because of a loss in our status or getting an embarrassing reputation or image. Again, just whoever is listening to this, or will listen to it, you have to put yourself in when your mind is upset. Okay, it's not just upset, of course, but any kind of distraction, it's going to be related to one of these. Okay? Are we good on that? Agreed? Now, I talked about the secondary afflictions, and there's 20 of them. I'm not going to go through these, but I just want to show you. Okay? Again, this is a more subtle, maybe more useful way, and more subtle. As one meditates and becomes more practicing mindfulness and becomes developing more concentration, you're becoming more and more aware of how the mind functions. And for those people, when you get to this, you recognize, I am distracted. Okay, whether it's upset or I can't focus, whatever it is, When it's that way, you can dig down. First of all, we could go to just the fundamental level, the three poisons. I'm distracted either because of attachment, ignorance, or anger, aversion. Okay? But if you want to dig down a little further, these secondary afflictions are just more subtleties of those three root ones. Okay? You okay with this? So I'm not going to go through these, but you think about resentment or spite. Why'd he say that? I can't even believe he didn't leave a note on my car, but I know who it is. He dented it, and I know who it is. Spite. Envy and jealousy all the time. Do people, when they meditate or trying to focus, do they get distracted by the political situation? Does that ever come into your head? Try reading a little bit of whatever, Facebook, something on the political situation, and then go meditate. Why can't we leave it? Aversion, right? Anger. Anger is, it could be attachment too. So anger is this, wrath, resentment, spite, envy, jealousy, cruelty. Okay? The red ones are related with anger. The green ones are related with attachment. And white is related to ignorance. I think dullness is part of ignorance. But anyway, I might have made a mistake here. And last one is a combination, I think, of ignorance and attachment, I think. Very interesting, these. There's different words sometimes for these. Pretension. I don't have... Oh. What is pretension? Anybody know? Isn't that like pretentious as you're demonstrating a... Stuck up, yeah. Let's see what the actual... spite, envy. Where's pretension? I'm really curious. I like the word pretension. You see, in ignorance, particularly, is forgetfulness. So that's a secondary mind. So when you lose the object of your concentration, this secondary mind is taking you over. Okay? So these are directly related to meditative practices as well. So the opposite of forgetfulness then is a wholesome mind. And there are wholesome minds. We talked about that, right? Okay, pretension, mental factor that when one is overtly attached to respect and material gain, fabricates a particular excellent quality about oneself, and then wishes to make it evident to others. It acts as a basis for the establishment of a mistaken livelihood and as a cause for a monk's being defeated by the fault of lying. Oh, that's for monks, yeah. There are two aspects of pretension. One that arises out of attachment and one that arises out of bewilderment or ignorance. I like that. Mental factor, when one is overtly attached to respect and material gain, fabricates a particular excellent quality about oneself and then wishes to make it evident to others. Sounds like some political leaders I could think of. I'm sure we all do that, right? It's like bragging. Anyway, when we meditate, you could pull this list out some point. It's very good to get familiar with these minds. Okay. Now, when we're good at meditating, the wholesome minds arise. Okay, and these are, what am I doing here? Oh, okay. These are obstacles to developing concentration. I'm going to go through this. This is not technical. This is authentic from the Buddhist practice of calm abiding. So we want to develop concentration. What's going to get in our way is laziness, forgetfulness. We just saw forgetfulness is a secondary mind. Laziness is also secondary mind. Okay? Excitement and laxity, those are the two main obstacles in developing deeper concentration. Very, very helpful, by the way. So, what happens is when we're doing our practices and people have meditation practice, we don't realize, like when we're thinking about, for example, trying to take care of all our to-do list, and we're thinking creatively, actually. It could be creative. It's really this thing about excitement. We're not confronting this mental factor of excitement. Or, taking it in a more subtle level, we're meditating, we're getting some really good results. And rather than being neutral, what do we tend to do? Get excited, yeah. But you're in excitability because it obscures. It disturbs the balance of your mind and your concentration. That's how subtle it is. As it gets high, if you go through the higher levels of calm abiding, you can get caught on subtle laxity in particular. Laxity is, in this case, not the same as laziness. Laxity here is a lack of clarity. Okay? And excitement, too, gets subtle. And it really takes some really profound discipline and clarity to break through those. Really, people get stuck at a very high level of concentration. I mean, we're getting to the 7th, 8th stages of calm abiding or developing single point of concentration. I mean, you really are a good meditator, so it's sometimes hard to recognize it. In fact, one has laxity and excitement. Okay, this is just to help you as you progress. Those 9 stages are very fascinating to read. But anyway, we're not going to look at them right now. But you'll have that in your Discovering Buddhism class module. There's then the failure to apply the antidotes when excitement and laxity. This is a very common problem. You fail. One is recognizing them. Okay, that's number 3. So it's very, very big part of our practice now. I want everyone to realize you're all meditating. You have to start to integrate these. It doesn't matter what kind of meditation you're doing, really. Okay, is to start becoming aware about excitement and laxity. Recognizing, they're right. Just becoming familiar with that. Because when we become familiar with it, that is what conquers distraction. Okay? And then you apply an antidote, and then the last thing is over-applying the antidotes when they're not needed. Okay, so that's just some technical jargon points. So distraction or mental scattering, we already talked about this. Related to anger, jealousy, attachment, ignorance, even virtuous states of mind. Very important. Remember that, because usually you think, that's what we want. But virtuous states of mind can be very distracting. Okay. So we're talking about excitement. can be traced to desire to pursue things that are enjoyable. And again, this goes all the way up through a subtle enjoyment, subtle excitement. Okay, this excitement is the mind is actually kind of agitated, but it can be a subtle agitation, rather than a sort of a neutral, observing mind. I like that guy in the middle of that pond. So distraction or excitement, just to help a little further, its object is attractive. The subjective aspect is scattered. That means the mind is scattered. So object attractive, subject is scattered. Because they're interdependent, right? Until we get advanced, and prevents a stable focus on one's object. So you can see how that could go through many levels, from gross to subtle. But right now we work with the gross. And again, you might be having a good meditation. Undoubtedly, excitement will creep in. Try to creep in. So you be vigilant, because you're like, oh wow, I'm really getting somewhere. Or or you see some aspect of the teachings. You're not supposed to do that, right? Oh, I really see what this idea of impermanence is. It's really hard not to go there, but that would be a distraction. So that's why virtuous thoughts can be distractions too. When your point is not, that's not your object of focus, meaning. You can turn it to your object of focus, of course. Excitement can be traced to desire to pursue things that are enjoyable. So that was that slide. Wanting to relax, a future nice experience, or a memory. These are the three things that can capture your attention and are then lead to excitability. A memory, right? So let's look at this for a second. A memory is something arising from the past, and it captures you. That's a distraction. Okay? Can you be when I say you, I mean me too. Can you be vigilant enough to be aware when memories are arising? Can you be vigilant enough when it's a thought of the future? That's the planning thing. That's the achievement thing. That's the to-do list. It's all about the future. So these are excitable. Now, wanting to relax is interesting too. This is the one where you're having a good meditation. And you go, oh, wow, this feels good. I've got it. Okay? That's excitability. So those three things are all we have to remember about excitability, okay? A future nice experience. When it says nice, taking care of your to-do list is viewed as nice. In a funny, strange way. Distracted by the dinner you're going to have is future nice, right? That's a nice, it's kind of a nice feeling. You get excited about it. Or you could also think taking care. I got to put this thing in the oven, so I'm distracted by that. That's not nice, but it is considered nice too because it's going to offer you comfort to get that done. All those are, and you don't move, don't get up. Work with it, observe it, watch it. See how it's controlling you. Oh, but I have to darn, I forgot. I'm supposed to check my texts. Margaret was going to tell me, and I was doing meditation. And we don't think of it as, I know it's a distraction, but, I have to do that. Don't do it. See what happens. And the mind feels so uncomfortable. Right? It's like, oh, I can't. I got to look. Turn your notifications off. No, well, but not with Messenger, or not with WhatsApp. I gotta leave that one on because, might be, so-and-so from Hong Kong was gonna get a hold of me on WhatsApp. It's amazing. That's the point is everything becomes content for learning. Nothing is accepted. Okay? Nothing's excluded. Nothing. It doesn't mean that, fire, your house on fire, we're not, those are extremes. It's when you sit down with the intention, I'm trying to develop my mind, I'm trying to develop control of my mind, understand my mind, all those things. That's what we're talking about. So you have to not text when you want to text. You have to not look at Facebook, and you have to watch what happens. Until then, we will be distracted forever. And then you think, Facebook, you hear a little ding ding on Messenger or whatever. This is all what's happening, right? And it reminds you of we think that's pleasurable to go look at the message, right? Because not looking at it is uncomfortable, discomfort. Stay with discomfort. Why not? Learn from that. That's the spiritual practice. Then the mind transforms. Then we become not under the control of the ding-dings of the world. So the mind can be trained. Dogs can be trained, we can be trained. So that's the deal. Recognize distractions immediately. Excuse me. Immediately. Usually we say, oh, but it's not a big deal. I know I heard the dinging of the Facebook. I just quickly looked. It's not a big deal. Why is it a big deal? Or what this is really going to, you notice the mind becoming excited. And, by the way, don't just think this is a meditation. This is all the time. Because we're going to develop this. The reason to meditate is so that we can meditate in the world. Meditate in the world means control the mind in the world. So now all of a sudden, it's like coming here, and you have those long roads, and light way up there is green. What does the mind do? Gets excited. I hope it stays green. I'm going to make the light. I'll be on time. Okay, but now most of the time, 99.9% of the time, we're not paying attention like that. You're not saying, oh, the mind, look how the mind's moving. That's what we want to do all the time. Maybe you still make the green light or not. That's a different story. But the control of the mind is you're always watching what's happening more and more and more. Then your meditation session changes too, by the way, right? They interact with each other. And all of a sudden, Margaret's going out doing all this stuff in her world, and she's watching it and going, wow, this is interesting. For the first time, I really had a whole day where I saw that I was normally get captured by all the things people telling me are so important to do. And I just watched my mind, and I got as much done but I'm much happier, content, clear, balanced. And then she goes into her meditation session, and lo and behold, she's more balanced. It's weird. Okay? So it's about recognizing it early, because once it takes us over, which is where we spend our time, it's so hard. Okay, I gotta do a breathing meditation. I gotta get rid of it that way. Right? My mind's agitated because I got that phone call. They want to come do a home inspection. My insurance lapsed. Doesn't matter what it is. Zillions of things. And so I already lost it. So when the guy calls on the phone, and I go, oh, God, really? I'm probably lost it. And then I go up to my session, and then it's like, oh, God, 4 or 5 minutes. Right? Yeah. So it's an amazing balance to... Of course, what we do on the meditation cushion is a good boost to how we approach our day, but then we start turning it into a sort of a cyclical thing, interactive, interrelated. Okay, so our goal then, to go more professional, is to develop calm abiding. This is where, look at that one, under that. What's under there? What's one of the 3? Mindfulness. But I'm kind of critical. I shouldn't be, because I'm not really as critical as I sound. But I just want more out of what's happening. I wish this mindfulness movement was more people, not I'm generalizing, I'm terribly generalizing, but a lot of it doesn't include the full picture. It's just mindfulness. So so what we're talking about, let's talk about calm abiding. See, it's calm abiding or single pointed concentration or serenity meditation, placement meditation, that mindfulness was sort of extracted. It's just one, extract and go, okay, let's teach mindfulness. But this idea of introspection and intention isn't presented. I don't know exactly why, because they still could make it secular and include these. And in fact, people do, in a kind of a, sometimes in a very, not very discreet way. I think they should do it discreet. Mindfulness, intention, introspection. Mindfulness, intention, introspection. But it's just mindfulness. And by the way, they slip in a little bit of introspection and those kinds of things. That's okay. It's helpful. But it's not the kind of helpful that we're looking for, because it's not sustainable. Just mindfulness is not sustainable. It's not very deep. Okay? It's a good thing. Okay? It's positive. But we're going for complete. So I'll just cover this real quick. So intention, is this too technical? Yeah? Is anyone listening at all out there? So intention, understand what is real happiness. A commitment to standing up to distractions. So that's the intention. You come into it with an intention of understanding what is real happiness, which we've been talking about tonight, and a commitment to standing up to distractions. That's the real intent. You're coming in with the intention that very alert intention. That's what we're going to do, standing up to distractions. And then, what did I do here? Calm abiding. I think I may have mixed up the slides a little bit. So this calm abiding we've been talking about is the ability to naturally remain on an object without interruption for as long as one wishes and with perfect clarity. Very important. It's not just focus. Okay? It's also clarity. That's really what calm abiding is concerned with, those two. Clarity and focus. Clarity and focus. Okay? So it's an employment of mindfulness and introspection. It helps develop the clarity and focus. Okay. So mindfulness prevents excitement. Remember we talked about all that excitement? So by not letting the mind stray from its object. Okay? So mindfulness includes focus and awareness of where the mind is going. Now introspection you bring in because that's what alerts you. A little part of the mind is being introspective. And it's aware of excitement that should be mind being excited or becoming excited. But also laxity too. You understand what I mean? So it's not just staying on the object. This introspection is there all the time too, because it's always going to let you know the quality of the mind and if things are sneaking in. Okay? It's interesting. Until you achieve calm abiding, then that's. So when we develop mindfulness, it's an object that is familiar to us, free of forgetfulness, and being able to hold your object with clarity and free of distraction. Its function is to keep the mind focused on the object and keep the mind from straying, i.e. the maintenance of concentration and elimination of distraction. In other words, to control the mind. So there's kind of like three functions going on. I think I'll just go through this quickly. In mindfulness, you focus your mind on your chosen object. So whether it's the breath or whatever it is, it can be many things. So in the Lam Rim tradition, Mahayana tradition, your focus of your object can be impermanence, it can be perfect human rebirth, it can be death and dying. Okay? Purpose of those analytical meditations is we still use them to develop focus meditation too. And then one aspect of the mind recognizes it is focused on its object, the breath, let's say, and then it's naturally, and then noticing if excitement and laxity are coming in. Okay, so it's more than just being bare awareness. A lot of mindfulness is just awareness, isn't it? Not all, but sometimes taught that because it's simple. You're just watching the mind, like, or watching the breath, just bare awareness of the breath. But here, if we're watching the breath, we're also, a little part of the mind is noticing excitement and laxity right away. It notices whether it's focused on its object. And also notice, I don't have your, about the clarity of the mind, okay? Recognizing the mind is excited or lax, and later recognize when laxity or excitement are about to move in, okay? Without introspection, you can spend hours, weeks, years, lifetimes in excitement or laxity. Many meditators do just that. I thought she had coffee, but now I see it's beer. So yeah, you can get very stuck in excitement or laxity for lifetimes. That's what many meditators get stuck in. And it's very seductive because these are very, very, very pleasurable states of mind. Those higher, in the 9 stages of developing calm abiding, it develops, it's only the first 2 or 3 that feel, after even the second stage feels really good, So, the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th feel great, and you can get stuck. It's subtle. You don't know that you're there. Okay, examining again and again the states of the body and mind, just in brief, is what it means to preserve introspection. So you're not giving up this bare awareness. So if it's just bare awareness, there's no introspection there. Like, how's the mind? Is there excitement? Is there laxity? Is there clarity? We need that. So there's a little part of it that knows. And that little part becomes very profound later on. That's the analytical mind that can recognize, that analyzes emptiness, analyzes impermanence, things like that. Okay. It can take months or years. Each stage provides great. This is mental health. Okay. Okay. So, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here for a second. Okay, so I think it's good enough for now. Okay? I think it's good enough. It's a lot of content. So maybe we just sit for a minute and just in your relaxed posture with the back. Main thing is the back means straight. And the head just slightly bent. Eyes can be either gently closed or slightly open. And your hands on your knees or your lap. For a minute, I'll interrupt you in a minute, but for the first few minutes, in the ABCD method, let's focus on the breath at the nostrils. Or it can be at your abdomen. No controlling of the breath. It's just like you're observing it. And I'd like you to count 1 on the exhalations. So 1, 2, 3 on each exhalation, up to 10. And then count backwards to 1. And we'll do that for a few minutes, and then I'll add something to it. Okay? A is for anatomy, so that means your body, being aware that it's straight and comfortable. B is the breath, so we're gonna it's our anchor, is the breath, I've just explained. C is for counting, so I just explained the counting. D is distractions, so you can be aware of distractions. Don't fight distractions. But right now, just focus on the breath, and we're going to do something with distractions in a second. Okay? You now notice the distractions if they come into the mind. As a mind, whatever the distractions, their nature, which of the poisonous minds or disturbing emotions do they fall into? Attachment, ignorance, or bewilderment, or aversion? Is the mind thinking, or is the mind seeing images? And part of the mind stays focused on the breath. So the object of focus is what pulls you away from the breath. So it's not the breath, it's not the object, that's in the background. But what we're interested in is distractions. What is the nature of the mind, the quality that pulls us away from the breath? Does it have a quality of excitement or laxity? Just observe it. Okay, so I think we'll stop here. One thing to remember in the developing the mind, nothing is off limits. So now distractions, laxity, agitation, excitement are all objects of the meditation. Since meditation means to become familiar with, we're not asking for these unpleasant states of mind to necessarily go away. We're going to actually observe them and learn from them, like studying cancer. With the microscope of the mind, introspection, and focus. Okay? So then you think about the time we spent together, this mental energy dedicate to your favorite project. You dedicate this to an increased development of awareness of how the mind functions. That way we can be of great benefit to others. Without it, we can't be of much benefit at all. So it's developing the wisdom and warmth and affection. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Valerie Ray said, "Thank you, Karuna."
Oh, thank you. Valerie Ray, thank you. Hope it was helpful. Thank you.